Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday, the 24th of May, 2021. I'd like to start with the opening prayer and acknowledgement of original custodians of our land. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision-making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today. Pay my respects to the elders, past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. Recording and webcasting the meeting. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you're respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received. I have received a conflict of interest declaration from Councillor Vanderman. Non-pecuniary, less than significant. Brief description. I own a property near the proposed road reconstruction. Ordinary council meeting item CM 13.1. Centre Road reconstruction, and the action is to leave the chamber. I have not been made any other conflicts. Mr. Zachnich, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This advice to council relates to disclosures of political donations under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The Act requires under section 10.4 a person submitting a planning application or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on the council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report, detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at the meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3, Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zachnich. Apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Cameron. Councillors, please. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives the notes and accepts the apology of Councillor Cameron and grant leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Let's acknowledge that Councillor Doxey is on Zoom for this meeting. Okay. There is no Merrill minute. Action plans. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Glacker.
Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, administrative only. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday, the 10th of May, 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move. Just wait a second. The minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 10th of May, 2021 at 6:24 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at
No,
all?
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Be no question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no reports from community forums, no notices of motion or rescission, no presentation of deputations. CM11, reports of committees and working parties. I have the minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 13th of April. Councillor Con.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, we had a very fruitful discussion about the upcoming urban forest strategy that many of our community representatives are very keen to be involved in, and similarly have recommended recipients under the Community Energy Fund, and our community representatives on the Sustainability Advisory Committee are really supportive of that program and really pleased to see it in our draft budget for next year.
Thank you. There being no further question or debate, happy to put the item. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no documents for sealing. CM 13.1 Centre Road reconstruction, Overend Street to Mud Street, contract number 20/02903. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that this item be deferred until the review of environmental factors has been completed, made available to councillors, and any amendments to the scope of work subsequently required made available to tenderers.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My reasoning for deferral is as written. This isn't to do with which tenderer has been recommended or not recommended. I was concerned about the proposed removal of 18 native trees from the road reserve for this project, and was keen to read the review of environmental factors, to read the justification for the tree removal and any proposed methodology to mitigate that environmental risk. But I understand that it hasn't actually been finalised and signed off by our environmental planners yet. And I think if there's any potential for the scope of the project to be amended in future, we really have to do that prior to awarding the tender. So I'm hopeful this can come back to the next meeting in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Glacken and Councillor King. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, Mr. Mayor. Two questions, if I may. The first being, how critical will this be to our scope of works and the program of works for council, noting that later we look at a report that says that we have some minor issues. I think that was the word used, minor issues with the council's program of works. And two, would it be possible for, if this tender was to be agreed tonight, for that tweaking to be made available to the councillors, that information to be made available to the councillors? And should there be a requirement for any tweaking to the scope of this specific product or this specific area of works, that could be negotiated with the tenderer subsequently? Thank you.
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So to answer the question, the changes, so we have had an approved REF for this project as part of the initial design on review. We've asked for that to be revised by our environment team, who have approved the revision, which includes the 18 trees to be removed. The paperwork has just been finalised at this stage, but certainly it's been signed off by our environment team as approved. It has very little bearing on the decision tonight around the preferred contractor. It has very minimal change to the scope of the contract, and it would be just dealt with as per the normal contractual procedures with the contractor once awarded. So we could certainly, it's council's prerogative to either make a decision tonight, or we can present the same report in a fortnight's time. It will just delay the project. Potentially we'll have the REF finalised this week, and the contractor would be able to access the site once letters of acceptance are all passed through.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Through Mr. Mayor, the relevant staff, how does this affect the integrity of the tender, where we're changing the scope of works and doubling the amount of trees to be removed? What's the council's or your department's position on the fact that an external tenderer might look at this before it's let and go, here's the scope of works, I'm not going to put in for it because of the tree issue. And ordinarily, if it had been a lot more accurate, they would have put in for it. Do you think that's a fair way to run our tender business?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that this very minor variation will have any impact on any tenderer considering to put in for this contract or not. As you can see, it is an extensive contract, and the addition of an additional 9 trees will make a very minimal difference to the scope of the works or people considering putting in for the tender or not putting in for the tender.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Stutchbury, and then I have a speaker against. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question really is to do with how these things come about. But would it be normal practice, through you, Mr. Mayor, for the relevant member of staff, would it be normal practice to present a document like this for our consideration without having the ref in it for us to consider?
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the ref is just similar to the design process and all the other approvals that we receive during the design phase, which typically aren't presented to council as part of the consideration of the successful tenderer. So it is just a process. We can't start works until the ref's approved. So there's no danger of us commencing any works until the ref is approved anyway.
Councillor Glacken speaking against.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to advise the councillor, so I foreshadow that should this motion be lost, that I would be moving the original motion as in the report. I believe this is an important contract for us to confirm tonight as a council. We need to make sure that this is able to commence at in a timely fashion. The cost of this is significant, but it has come in under tender, and I think it's an opportunity for us as a council to take and make the most of this. I note the comments made by the DCEO with reference to the report that would not ordinarily be included with the documentation for the awarding of a contract or a tender. And so I see there is no reason why we should be stalling on the awarding of the tender, and that the slight, and I agree with the staff, the slight modification of the works is something that I'm sure happens on a very regular basis, because nothing would ever be exactly as would be planned. And there would be a number of times with projects as things progress that would be modified. And I think we as council should approve this so that we can get the works underway. We can continue with our program for the year. And what is now a road that is not as safe as it could be. And once these works are done, that road will be much safer. And we as council need to be ensuring that we have good and safe roads. The works, the slight modification to the works are only being suggested because it will be safer for that additional work to be carried out. So I cannot support this motion as we have before us tonight, and would prefer us to commence this work as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Speaker 4, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've been driving out to the tip for 20 odd years. The road is no better or worse now than it was 20 years ago. This matter is not in the slightest bit urgent, despite Councillor Glacken's treatise that we must rapidly improve road safety. There are two things about this contract that concern me. And one is the removal of 18 trees. Not quite sure why we need to remove 18 trees in order to do up a road. The trees are not growing in the middle of the road. I can assure you of that. I was on the road yesterday. And secondly, I do have significant concerns about the fact that the lowest tenderer, the one that staff have recommended that we approve, the tender is not just a little bit less than the others, but it's a lot less than the others. And there's got to be a reason for that. And there are two possible reasons. One is that we've made a mistake and the job really is a hell of a lot cheaper to do than we have estimated as an organisation. Or secondly, that the tenderer has made a mistake in his tendering and it's all going to come back in some awful way that we've had experience with a couple of times in the last 4.5 years. So there's no rush to get this project done. It's not a race, it's not a Grand Prix, it's just a road that needs to be done up at some stage. And I think that the whole thing should be done properly. And yeah, I have concerns about the price of the proposed successful tenderer.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I mainly speak to add a third reason that Councillor Stutchbury failed to indicate. Contractors often offer a low price because they don't have a lot of work on the books, and contractors offer a high price because they're very, very busy. So this could be that this contractor has got the capacity, he's got the time, and he's prepared to do it at the price he's quoted. I don't care if he's made a mistake, he's locked into the price of the contract. So I don't have any problem in the context of awarding the contract. I accept the statements from Mr Ferris that the environmental factors review has been carried out and our team has approved that, and I'm prepared therefore to vote for the original motion.
Thank you. Speaker 4, and a question first. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. Councillor Stutchbury raised concerns with the value of the lowest tenderer and the fact that we're awarding to that tender and it's significantly different. Now, my memory is that that was clarified in the report and that a process is gone through. Could the staff refresh our memory, please, as to what process has gone through to confirm that the tender is a complete tender and would be able to meet the requirements of the contract?
Mr Ferris.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor. So yeah, with the large difference in the price and our estimate being around some of the other tenderers' price, not the recommended tenderer, we did go back to the recommended tenderer. We did ask them to clarify their price. We did identify areas that they should have a full review of. They've come back and confirmed that their price is as per their submission.
Thank you.
Councillor King speaking for.
I'm speaking for the motion. My slant on this is the integrity of the tender system. Either you have it right to start with or you don't. Everyone needs a fair playing field when they do tender for these jobs. And I think it's quite bemusing that we then tweak things as we go along. And how far do we tweak these things after the tender has been let and the jobs has started? So I'm voting for the motion.
Thank you. There appears to be no further speakers for or against. Councillor Condon, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I need to make it clear in proposing to defer this that we're not talking about deferring a road safety project by 10 years. If the changes are as insignificant as staff are saying they are verbally this evening, then the next meeting of this council is scheduled for the 15th of June, and I'm entirely comfortable with waiting that long for works to commence. It's been suggested that the change to the environmental factors is not significant, but I can't possibly, as a councillor, assess whether that's the case or not if we haven't been provided with a copy of the review of the environmental factors. It's not usually included in the tender documentation, but it's the policy of this council that councillors must be provided with a copy of all approved reviews of environmental factors. That was a motion that I successfully moved earlier in this term of council, and we have a specific folder in our document system where those documents are put for us to review. So I don't think that we can make an informed decision unless we've been provided with all of the appropriate information in writing. And if that change truly is insignificant, then this tender will be awarded on the 15th of June. And I don't see that as an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.3, the Mama Provisional Board Appointments Governance Review. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Van der Ven's coming back in. Just give me 2 seconds. What's that? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Lucky he's not back in the room. 13.2 is the March quarter budget review. Thank you for the update. You'll have a mover in a second. Thanks, councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and adopts the revised budget estimates for the 2021 financial year and authorises the drawdown of 4.9 million in budgeted loans during the 2020-21 financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, you got your card up there?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to open debate?
No, that's fine. I reserve my right of reply should there be a need.
Okay, there are no speakers for or against. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're up to 13.3, the Mama Provisional Board Appointments Governance Review. Thank you, councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A endorses the following recommended appointments for the Mama Provisional Board. 1, Alyssa Bailey. 2, Lorraine Connolly-Northey. 3, Megan Cullen. 4, Anne Nolan. 5, Janet Osborne. 6, Isabel Parker-Phillip. 7, Jane Pochon as Chair. 8, Michael Rolfe. 9, Guinevere Threlkeld, and endorses the recommended members of the Interim Acquisitions Committee. 1, Lorraine Connolly-Northey, Provisional Board. Megan Cullen, Provisional Board. Emma Crimmings, Janet Osborne, Provisional Board. Isabel Parker-Phillip, Provisional Board. Tony Smith, Mama Art Foundation. Councillor David Thurley and Guinevere Threlkeld, Provisional Board. C, endorses the draft terms of reference for the Interim Acquisitions Committee. And D, receives a further report to Council in July 2021. And E, acknowledges the work of Mama Advisory Committee members and formally ceases the Mama Advisory Committee after its final meeting on the 28th of May 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Van der Ven.
Very happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to that?
Briefly, I mean, we've embarked on this program to have the Mama run as a company limited by guarantee, and I think that was a great decision. We then went out to advertise for board members. We think we got 20 applicants from a wide range of skills and background. As you'll see, it won't appear there, actually, I need to spell it out. We have a number of local candidates who've been reappointed. They've already served on the existing advisory committee, but we have a number of very strong candidates from out of town. And we have Isabel Parker-Phillip, Senior Curator at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Michael Rolfe is also very well versed in the arts. And Jane Pochon, and she has a strong background in law, financial services and company law. And it's been recommended that she be the chair of the interim board. So I think we've got a very strong board to start on this new way of running Mama. The Acquisitions Committee is an interim committee until appropriate arrangements are made with the new board and how it will all be structured. These are all people who've had experience on the existing advisory board and the Acquisitions Committee. So I think in the end, we've got a very strong group to take over this new structure.
Thank you. Councillor Van der Ven, no speakers against. You wish to speak for?
Look, to back up what Councillor Thurley said, but also to just put a bit of emphasis on the item E, which is to acknowledge the work of the Mama Advisory Committee members that aren't continuing on into the to the new board.
And I think that's a special thank you to those people for the job that they've done in the past.
Thank you. So done. There are no speakers for or against. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.4, the draft Albury mountain bike strategy. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A receives and endorses the draft Albury mountain bike strategy. B, places the draft Albury mountain bike strategy on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days. And C, if no submissions are received through the public exhibition, the draft Albury mountain bike strategy be adopted as the final version.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to open debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since I moved the notice of motion in July last year, calling for a mountain bike strategy, I'm really impressed with the volume of work that's been done, and particularly with the level of community consultation that's been done by our consultant. In moving part C of the recommendation tonight, I'm sure that won't be needed, given we had 376 online submissions into the formation of the strategy and a volume of emails following the passage of that motion last year before we'd even appointed the consultant. So this is something that the community is extremely passionate about. And I think based on the feedback that they've heard so far, the consultants produced a really excellent document that takes into account the tremendous opportunities we've got in this region to support a growing sport, but also relevant constraints, whether that's accessibility or safety or some of our sensitive environmental areas. So I really look forward to hearing from the community again. I'm sure we'll get plenty of feedback over the next 28 days.
Thank you. Any further questions or debate? No. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. 13.5, the draft companion animal strategy. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Council A endorses the draft 2021-2025 Companion Animals Management Strategy. B, places the draft Companion Animals Management Strategy on public exhibition for 28 days. And C, should no submissions be received, adopts the Companion Animals Management Strategy 2021-25.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to it at all?
No, I'll reserve, thanks.
There being no further question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We're up to officers' reports for noting. 14.1, the investment balances April 2021. Councillor Gluckin.
Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of April 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you. No, but I'll reserve my right.
Okay. There's no questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 14.2, the corporate health indicators for March 2021. Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives and notes the March 2021 Corporate Health Indicators Report.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
I think it's an excellent report. My only minor thing is that our lost time injury frequency rate took a little bit of a hit, but still at a reasonably good level. I'd like to see it back to where it was, but all good.
Thank you. There is no further question or debate. I'm happy to put the question. Councillor Vanderman.
A question in terms of through you to the staff, just in terms of the resourcing available for development applications, which just seem to be getting a little out of hand, but we know how busy they are.
Mr. Christie's coming forward. He's got a bit of a limp up. Must be the weight of carrying all those DAs, Mr. Christie. Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question and for you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, development application numbers are up significantly. Without having the precise figures in front of me, they're pretty much around a third, if not higher than what they are at similar times. Last year, we've got a few ways we are approaching. We're looking at permanent resourcing, which we have gone out to the market a couple of times. We're also supplementing some of that lack of resource at the moment, because we do have a couple of vacant positions with some additional external resource in the form of consultant to assist us with the workload. Plus, we also have been streamlining some of our processes internally. And then there's also the move to e-planning. So since the 1st of January, it's been compulsory to lodge all applications through the planning portal. And now after the 1st of July, in accordance with New South Wales government guidelines, will also be the same for all post-construction certificates as well, which is your occupation certificates, final occupation certificates, linen plans, all those types of matters. But there's a variety of measures trying to keep on top of what is a pretty significant workload.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So as long as your corporate health is fine, Mr. Christie, we'll move on. Okay, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We're up to the operational plan quarterly progress report. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council receives and notes the Albury City Operational Plan Quarterly Progress Update, March 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Only to note that we're generally speaking on track. We have a few issues here and there, but nothing major that I can see.
Thank you. There are no questions or speakers for or against. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. The 2021 program status report, March quarter. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
I move the recommendation of the motion that council receives and notes the status of the 2021 works program as at the 31st of March 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Just a quick one, a question through you, if I may.
Yep.
In terms of where we sit today, what have been the issues in relation? We seem to be not catching up a little bit of the backlog of stuff. What are the main reasons for that?
Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly there's been some issues around resourcing with regard to design capacity and consultants. Some of the other issues are around extra works that have been included within the program as well. So yeah, but there are a number of projects that are planned over, have been planned over the last quarter that have enabled us to accelerate the progress a little bit.
So just to follow up, you're expecting that completion in terms of what you propose to complete, that'll be tighter to your intended completion by the end of the financial year?
Yeah, through you again, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, certainly as the report indicates, we are looking at a 95% or somewhere in excess completion rate at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. There appears to be no questions or any debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. 14.5, the monthly development stats for April 2021. We have a mover and seconder. Thanks. Councillor Vanderman.
I'll move the recommendation motion. The council receives and notes the information in the monthly development statistics report for April 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Just quickly, obviously my question before was in terms of this particular item as well, noting that the number of development applications that have been lodged with council, and concerned to make sure that our particular goals, or the council goals in terms of the turnaround of those DAs gets sufficient resource. So yeah, it's great to see the activity in within the local government area in terms of those development applications, but it's also a double-edged sword in terms of the resources required to handle that sort of demand. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No further questions or debate. Just a question, Mr. Christie, in relation to 46 Tweed Court. We had the community forum in October last year, and the applicant was going to respond. Do you know what the status of that is at the present time, or have you heard from them at all?
Thanks for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we have been in contact with them. At this stage, they're re-evaluating what they are doing. They've indicated they've taken on board community concerns and also concerns noted by the councillors. So they are re-evaluating, seeing if there's ways they can amend their application, which includes consideration of what might be the future actual dwellings on those sites with more certainty and therefore the impacts of the works. And so that's what's taken them some time to get that detail together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no delegates' reports for noting. Councillor Thurley, you have something to raise in urgent business.
At the 77th Annual Conference of the Murray-Darling Association, the successful bidder for the 78th conference was announced, and I'd like to thank the team here at Albury City for putting in a bid that was accepted. And so the 78th Annual Conference of the MDA will be held here in Albury next year, date to be determined. One of the staff members of the MDA will be here in Albury on Monday, and she has an itinerary with Rachel Orr to look around sites and so on. So the conference we went to, and I'll give you more detail in my delegate report at the next council meeting, we had 130 delegates attending and quite a few more online. Probably from the feedback I got, one of the best conferences we've had to date. So the challenge is there for Albury to beat that. I'd have to say, if the quality of the conference comes up to the quality of the video we presented, we'll rock it. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. I believe you had a few bus problems, they told me, coming back from Menindee. Is that right?
Yes.
Need the hose doctor?
We stopped at Poon Carey, and after that we couldn't get out of low range. So we drove at 37 kilometres an hour for quite some time. Both Mr. Lawson, Mr. Ferris and myself were amazed at the poor mathematical skills of those on the bus, trying to calculate arrival times at speeds of 37 kilometres an hour and covering distances of 5 kilometres in 7.5 minutes and so on. But we eventually got back there and all was fine.
There's always one problem. Thanks, Councillor Thurley. Okay, there's no other urgent business. We have a confidential item. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move that we move into confidential, exclusive of the public, press and public, on the grounds that the matters and information are the following. Information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business, and commercial information of confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it. And it's in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A, 2C and D and I.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I must ask if there's anyone in the chamber that wishes to make any statements or submissions in relation to why the reason identified for the confidential item should not be allowed. There are 0 submissions. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We'll just wait for the doors to be closed and the chamber to be vacated. Just consider the confidential item.